Welcome to Becoming a Research Pro. My name is Steve Jameson, and after you complete this workshop, hopefully you'll come away with some tips, some tricks, some strategies to really become a more effective and efficient researcher, a research pro. So to get started, maybe what we should do first is ask, well, what is research really? And so when I was preparing this presentation, I sat down and thought about that myself, and this is what I came up with. I came up with research is a structured exploration or inquiry that's designed in response to a research question or problem. And it has the aim of supporting, defending, or proving an assertion, a claim, a conclusion that arises, aka your thesis statement, if that's terminology you're familiar with or you've heard your professor use. So that gives us, that definition kind of gives us a research flow, process of what research looks like. So it begins with a question or a problem. Now this could be from an assignment, it could be something from that's happening in your life. And if it's from an assignment, it could be that you have a lot of direction from the professor, or maybe it's very open-ended and you need to narrow down to a particular topic or focus. But regardless, so you take that question or problem, and that feeds into a phase of inquiry and exploration, where you're searching for resources that are out there to help you answer your question or problem. And then you come away with a supported thesis. Now, that inquiry and exploration part, that's going to be what we're going to focus on right now. Okay, so we've got the that flow. Okay, so are we ready to hit Google? Well, not quite. As Mary George says in the Elements of Library Research, taking time will save time. Taking some time up front to plan what you're going to do, to get background information, to enter into that process deliberately and thoughtfully will ultimately save you time in the end, because you won't be spinning your wheels or going down all kinds of dead ends or rabbit trails as you work towards your research project. So what we need really is a roadmap. And this is one roadmap that we're going to talk through today. One possibility. This worksheet, which we'll provide downloads for, is a map for how you can go about this process. So let's start at the top, and that's what is your topic. So you fill this out, first box at the top, just whatever information you have about what your topic is at that stage. So whether it is just an assignment prompt from your professor, or if you've thought about it some and you've come up with a particular area of focus that you think you might be interested in, just put it in there. Maybe it's a question, maybe it's a statement, whatever it is, put that in the box right at the top. And there's some, here's some tips for picking a good topic. So one, is it interesting to you? Is it a topic that you're interested in? Are you going to enjoy, to some extent, researching this topic? And are you going to be invested in finding or coming to some conclusion? And is it interesting to your professor? Is this something your professor is going to want to read? Your professor would really love to read a good paper that they will find interesting. Also think about, is your topic narrow enough in scope for you to cover in the assigned number of pages that you have to work with? You're not writing a book, you're not writing a dissertation necessarily. If you're just writing a 10-page paper, you're going to have a pretty narrow focus for your topic and your research in order to cover it at adequate level. You don't want to just be up in the clouds at overview stage. You need to dig in deep and get into some detail, because that's going to be a more interesting paper. And then think, is this something that has probably been discussed in previous literature? You need to find good sources out there. So you need to find something that isn't completely out there and novel. You need something that is a conversation between scholars that you can enter into and provide some input into that conversation. So once you have a good idea for a topic, you've written that on your sheet, and you can bring that down into this center ring right here. You can just take the main idea from that topic and write it right in here. And what you're going to do here is then build out a concept cloud, so you can write down other related concepts or terminology, or use these hints up here, synonyms. What are synonyms for that main idea? What are words that experts use when they're talking about that idea? Are there any kinds of people or kinds of people, any particular person that's important or a kind of person that's important? How about dates, places, events? Put those in there, draw lines, connect them, connect the different topics to one another, and build out a cloud. Now, to really do this well, what you need is a working knowledge of your topic. You need to know what is the state of scholarship on the topic, what has been written already, what are the influential positions, what are the controversies and unsolved issues, and who are the important people, places, or events related to your topic. And that's the kind of information that you can fill into that chart. But you need to have this good working knowledge to be able to research that topic in more depth. But to do that, we have some tools, some reference tools to help you with that. So reference tools give you background information to get you started in unfamiliar territory. When you're entering a new field of study or researching a topic that you're not super familiar with, these tools are going to give you good background information, a good overview of your topic. Now, these are not necessarily what you're going to cite in your paper. This is just background information. You're going to find other sources to cite, but this is just to get you grounded in the topic. And where you really need to be looking more for are key terms, learning the lingo. What are those terms that people use, scholars use, when they talk about your topic? And you're going to use it to build a conceptual framework so you have a better understanding of your topic as you go into your research, and you can understand what you read from the books and journal articles that you find as you do research, and kind of plug them into where do they fit within the scholarly discussion of your topic, and how do they relate to one another. And lastly, reference tools will often include a bibliography of important works generally about your topic, maybe foundational works that have been particularly significant, or just really good resources that the author of that reference tool recommends. And so mine that bibliography, look for those bibliographies, and then look up those books and journal articles as good first sources potentially to turn to as you enter into your research process. So what are these reference tools? Well, first we have encyclopedias and dictionaries, and I lump these two things together because the line between them is really blurry. There are single volume encyclopedias, there are multi-volume dictionaries, vice versa. Whether it's called encyclopedia dictionary, it's just up to the publisher. So we have things like the Westminster Dictionary of Theological Terms. So if you're in class and your professor's using a theological term, you're unfamiliar with it, this can be a great resource to turn to. Or if you're doing reading as you're doing your research and the author uses a term that you're unfamiliar with, a good theological dictionary can be really handy just to help you understand what you're reading. Now, kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum, we have something like the Encyclopedia of Applied Ethics. So this is a reference work in the field of ethics. And this is, I think it has 4 volumes, and each article in here is maybe 10, 11, 12 pages long, so really long, so lots of detail, lots of information to help you enter into the discussion of the topics that are covered from the standpoint of ethics. Have the Dictionary for Theological Interpretation of the Bible. So if you have a question, a research topic about the interpretation of the Bible, theologically speaking, this can be a great place to go to get that theological perspective on biblical interpretation. Then there's some work like the Dictionary of the Later New Testament and its Developments, and there's other volumes in this series from InterVarsity Press that cover the entire canon of Scripture, so Dictionary of the Gospels, etc. Old Testament, New Testament, and so if you're doing research in a particular, in biblical studies, in a particular book of the Bible or section of books of the Bible, this can be a great place to turn for background information about topics in biblical studies. We even have something like the New Dictionary of Christian Apologetics, so apologetics reference tool. So thinking about different topics in religion, theology, biblical studies, but from an apologetic perspective. Or something like the Dictionary of Biblical Imagery, where it goes through and brings up words, images, symbols, figures of speech, and gives you an overview of how that is used throughout the Bible. Baker Encyclopedia of Bible People. So if you're researching a particular person in the Bible, this can be a good place to start. Now, another type of tool is bibliographies. So a standalone bibliography is a book that is just a list of other books and journal articles. So here's one, Angels. It says, this is an indexed and partially annotated bibliography of over 4,300 scholarly books and articles since the 7th century BC about angels. Now, bibliographies are organized different ways. Sometimes they'll be organized topically, so there'll be a table of contents, and it'll break down the topic by different subtopics or areas, and then you can flip through to that page and see all the resources filed there. Something like this, it's a list of books and articles, but there's an index in the back where you can go look up some aspect of angels, something related to angels, and it'll give you a list of entry numbers and pages probably, and then you can go look up those entries. And this is an annotated bibliography, which is really helpful because there the author has given you a short summary or maybe evaluation of the work. And so that helps you know if that's a resource that you want to go pursue in getting from the library. Here's another example. The Book of Amos, an annotated bibliography. Again, an annotated bibliography, so you get those summaries, those annotations. And the Book of Amos is a really short book of the Bible, but this book is like an inch thick. So a lot has been written about the Book of Amos, and this is a book that could help you enter into that literature. Handbooks. So there's a variety of different things that might fit into this category. Here's the Handbook of Denominations in the United States. If you're doing research into different denominations, this will give us an entry for each denomination in the United States with some basic statistical information, historical summary, and so if you're come across a denomination that you've not heard of before, this is a great resource to turn to find out more about that denomination, what their history is, what their distinctives are. Then we have in the library, this Library in a Book series. This is a really neat series. There's about 24 of these books on different topics. Highlighted here, I've got Sexual Misconduct in the Clergy. And it's this kind of one volume research guide, really, because it gives you an overview of the topic, it gives you timelines of important events, it gives you glossary of terms that are used in the research and study of that topic, it gives you biographies of important people, bibliography, all kinds of different resources, all in this one book. So if you can find a book like this on your topic, that's a gold mine. So those are some of the reference tools that are available to you for giving you that kind of background information, but how do you find them? Well, one strategy is you can go into our catalog and type in, kind of broadly, if I was doing research in church history, maybe medieval church history, I might just type into the catalog, and I want to go to the advanced search screen so I can put in these different parameters. Just type in medieval. Think broad. What broad area does your topic fit into? So I might type in medieval. And then what I want to do is in that next line, select LC subject, do a subject search, and type in encyclopedias or dictionaries. And it's important that you make that plural so that you just, it needs to be plural. Include the or in there. And then you can see what encyclopedias or dictionaries the library has about the medieval time period. So let me show you that live real quick. I'm going to go in here and go to the library homepage, covenantseminary.edu/library. And instead of using this catalog search bar, I'm going to come down here and click on the Covenant catalog. Of course, if you're using some other library catalog or WorldCat or something like that, the same principles apply. So again, I'm going to go over here to the search options over here on the right side of the screen and click on Advanced Search. And that gives me those search options. So I'm going to type in medieval and then choose subject, do encyclopedias or dictionaries. And there, so we get the Facts on File Encyclopedia of World Mythology and Legend, an ebook, Historical Dictionary of Islam, A to Z Guide to the Crusades, New Westminster Dictionary of Church History. So all kinds of different resources related that cover the medieval time period that could have information for my research. Okay, so that's one option there. We also have an online reference search. So we have online reference tools as well as what's in the library's print collection that you can search easily. We've built a tool that allows you to search through the contents of all our online reference tools, regardless of what platform they're on, so that you can find that material very easily. So let me pop back over into my web browser. I'm going to go back to the library homepage. And under other catalogs here, I'm going to go down and click on online reference. And I can type in something like atonement. And see, and this is going to search through encyclopedias and dictionaries to find articles, entries about atonement. So we get, Encyclopedia Judaica, get Encyclopedia of Religion. Here's atonement, Christian concepts. Again, Encyclopedia of Religion, atonement, Jewish concepts. So depending on what my research interest is in the atonement, these are some interesting things. We also have another platform, Credo Reference, tools like the Evangelical Dictionary of Theology, Dictionary of Biblical Imagery, Dictionary of Scripture and Ethics, etc., and on down. I can click on any one of these and pick this one from the Encyclopedia Judaica. And if I was off campus, at this point I'd be asked to log in with my library account, just my name and the ID number off my ID card, and then I can get into this article. And I get an overview of the topic, atonement in the Bible and rabbinic literature, and then a little bibliography here at the end of important works. I can go back. Maybe let's check, see what the Encyclopedia of Religion has on Christian concepts of the atonement. Now we go in, it gives you Old Testament background. It talks about the Hebrew root word, etc. New Testament foundation. How is atonement appear in the New Testament, in the Gospels, Paul, and then starts going into the different theories of the atonement, classical, up through the Reformation, and modern theories, and then a pretty good bibliography here of important works about atonement. So that's kind of some of the reference tools that are available and how you can find reference content. And so plug your topic, the main idea, a keyword from there into that reference search engine. Try and find some print reference works maybe, and then fill out this concept cloud. Build your background knowledge and fill out this concept cloud to get a good overview of how what your main idea kind of looks like. And then from there, you can start focusing if you need to. If you need to narrow your focus to bring it down to a manageable size. So you can take something like eating disorder. That's pretty, it's a specific psychological disorder, but there's a lot written on eating disorders, so you can narrow that down. So you could say, well, let's narrow it down by gender. So let's say men with eating disorders. Still, that's a big group, so maybe we can focus it even more to college students. So we've taken a topic, a pretty broad topic, eating disorders, and then narrowed it down by gender and then by age group. And then, so using the concept cloud, focusing your idea, you need to pick out some keywords. These are the words that you're going to be typing into a search engine to find books and journal articles about your topic. So go through your concept cloud and pick out what are the most important words, maybe what are important combinations of words, eating disorder and men and college student, and write that in your keyword box so you can and pick a couple different combinations. And so you have different options to try when you hit the catalog and databases. So now how do these work when you get in there? So here are 6 books, a really small library catalog. And I'm going to do some research on the doctrine of perseverance of the saints, the point of Calvinism. The P of tulip, perseverance. So if I just type in perseverance as a search into a catalog, well, what is the computer going to do? What the catalog or database is going to do is just going to go through and give me everything that has the word perseverance in it. So it could be something like the necessity of perseverance in well-doing. Well, that's not really the sense in which I was using the word perseverance. Or Chinese restaurants never serve breakfast. Well, it hit on Perseverance Press, the name of the publisher. Finally, we get down to Paul and Perseverance, staying in and falling away. That one looks good. And we can go on down. And then we see number 6 here, Are the Sheep Secure? That sounds like it could be relevant, but since the author didn't use the word perseverance, it didn't show up in my search, and I missed that. So this highlights the fact that words are messy. So sometimes we use the same word to mean 2 different things, so perseverance in faith or perseverance in adversity. Similarly, depression, well, do you mean psychological depression or economic depression? Then on the flip side, sometimes we use multiple words for the same thing. So teenagers, adolescents, youth, words are messy. But the catalog and databases can help you out. So anytime a book comes into the library, anytime an article, an issue of a journal comes into an indexing shop, the cataloger or indexer asks, what is this thing about? So for this book, Unchristian by David Kinnaman, we can say, it's about the religious life of Generation Y, the religious life of young adults, the religious life of youth, etc. And then when we get into the catalog, we see those showing up down here. So Generation Y, religious life. And these are what we call subject headings. They're categories. There's a system, a fixed thesaurus of words, a listing of words that a cataloger or indexer can use to indicate what a topic is about. So it can categorize it. So everything about the religious life of Generation Y should be categorized under Generation Y -- religious life. Now that -- is a level in a hierarchy. So there's a Generation Y subject, and then we can say religious life as a narrower category. So that -- is just an indication that we're going down a level and getting narrower. And so you can see religious life can be, a subcategory of probably any demographic group, Generation Y, young adults, youth. So if we go back to my example before, so now I've added in those subject headings, those categories, and if we redo my search for perseverance, okay, at least this time we've gotten number 6 because now the cataloger has added the term perseverance to the record. But the real power here is that as we go down, and once we find one book that is relevant to my research, I can look at those subject headings. I can say, perseverance theology. So there's a way that I can narrow my search to just the books or articles that are about perseverance in the theological sense. So let me redo the search, but using that subject term to say, hey, give me everything that's on that subject. If I do that, then all the junk that I'm not interested in falls away, and I get some very highly targeted results. In addition, when I'm looking at number 6 there, I may notice that, hey, there's also this heading, assurance theology. So that's kind of a related topic that may be of interest to me, but it's not a word I thought of. So the catalog, again, is helping me out and saying, hey, there's this related topic that I might want to look at. So let's take a look at how this works in real life. So I go back to the library homepage, and right now I'm going to do a search for youth ministry. So I'm going to type in youth ministry here into the catalog search box, and I'm putting it in quotation marks. That tells the database or the catalog that I wanted those two words treated together as a phrase. If I left the quotation marks off, it would say, okay, I'm going to give you everything that includes the word youth, and that includes the word ministry. And it doesn't have to necessarily be together. It could be used in different contexts of the record. So I want things that are specifically about the phrase youth ministry. And so I put it in quotation marks. I'm going to click search and see what comes up. So I've got 129 results about youth ministry. So lots of stuff here. So I'm going to just go down here and, for the purposes of my research here, I'm going to just pick one of these. So let's try, I don't know, how about, we'll just scroll down, gospel-centered youth ministry. There you go. Let's take a look at that one. So I click down, and then I want to take a look at what the subjects are. So I'm going to scroll down, and here we have just one subject on this record, church work with youth. So that tells me that church work with youth is the terminology that the catalog uses, the category that it uses for youth ministry. So if I'm doing research on youth ministry, maybe I should check out everything that is categorized under that heading. So I can click that in our catalog, and that will take me into the list of all the headings that are used, all the subject headings that are used in our catalog, and put me right there at church work with youth. And if I look over here, I can see that there are 158 records in our catalog about church work with youth. So that's a bigger number than the, I think it was 129 that I found with my search for youth ministry. So there must be some works about youth ministry that are not using the terminology youth ministry, but the catalog is helping me out by grouping them all together under church work with youth. Now the other thing to note here is below that, again, dash dash, you see these subcategories. So for example, church work with youth case studies, and there's 6 of those. So we have 6 case studies about youth ministry. And those 6 are not part of this 158. So it's actually 158 plus works about youth ministry. And we can get down into all kinds of different subcategories. We even have one work about church work with youth in the Presbyterian Church in America. Now if I want to see any of these, I can click on that heading and see those 6 case studies about youth ministry. So I was able to use those subject headings to narrow in on the specific type of literature and pull that out. that's pretty helpful. Now, another thing we can do is, let's go in a different way. So I'm going to click back to the catalog here. And one research project that has been assigned in the past has been to study how the New Testament quotes and uses the Old Testament. So how do New Testament authors use the Old Testament in their writing? One of the key works on that is Carson and Beale's commentary on the New Testament use of the Old Testament, and that's been a required textbook. So if I search for Carson and Beale and pull up that book, see, there we go, Commentary on the New Testament Use of the Old Testament, edited by Carson and Beale, or Beale and Carson. So let's click through that and see what subject headings are on that book, so I can find more material like that. So we have here a couple potentially relevant subject headings there: Bible, Old Testament, -- relation to the New Testament, and then the reverse. So let me click here on the Bible, New Testament relation to the Old Testament and see what comes up for that. And so we see there that we have 162 books on that topic. So that's a lot. So I'm going to need to narrow that down a little bit. But before I do that, before I click through to that, I'm going to look around again. Like we saw, we could find case studies on youth ministry before. I want to see what else is here. So we might notice, oh, Bible, New Testament, relation to the Pentateuch. So that's a little narrower, or even relation to Zechariah. But also above here, here's my subject heading that I was looking for before, relation to the Old Testament, and says, hey, there's two related subject headings that I might be interested in. So let me click on that to see what other subject headings there are there. So Bible, Old Testament, quotations in the New Testament, that seems pretty relevant. And typology, theology, which maybe I might come back to that. So let me click on this quotations in the New Testament, because that seems really relevant. And then, so there we go. So we have 52 works about that topic. And then here's another note up here. So, so if I'm interested in this subject, Old Testament, quotations in the New Testament, check out also Bible, New Testament, relation to the Old Testament. Well, that's just where I came from. But here's another neat note down here. So subdivision, so subcategory, relation to the Old Testament. Okay, yeah, we've seen that before. New Testament relation to the Old Testament. But under individual New Testament books and groups of books. So what that is telling me is I can, instead of doing Bible, New Testament, I could say, Bible, insert name of biblical book or group of biblical books, i.e. Gospels, and then stick the subcategory relation to the Old Testament onto it, and I've got a valid subject heading for which there could be material in the catalog. So there's subject headings for individual New Testament books, there's subject headings for groups of biblical books, and then we saw there's lots of different ways you can add on relation to the Old Testament, or as we saw before, relation to the Pentateuch, other groups of books, or individual books. So that gives me an idea. So I'm going to go over here and click on Advanced Search. Now I'm going to choose here, search for subject. I'm going to type in the name of a book of the Bible. So let's try Ephesians. And the subject, I'm going to type in here relation to. Again, I'm putting that in quotation marks because I want to find that relation to phrase. Now, I'm not necessarily concerned at this point what it's related to. I just want to find things that are about the book of Ephesians, and I want to find things that are about its relation to something else. The Old Testament, the Pentateuch, Genesis, any other book of the Bible. And let's do a search there. And so in our catalog, I've got 3. So I've got 3 works that are about the book of Ephesians and its relation to something else. Now that may not be that many, but if I go back to the library homepage, I could go to Mobius, our local group of sharing libraries, or even up to WorldCat, a worldwide catalog of books and libraries around the world, mostly North America. So a huge database of like literally 1 billion books. I can do the same search there. So do Ephesians as subject, again subject, quotation marks, relation to, search there, and I've searched through a huge number of books in libraries around the world and gotten it down to 25 that are relevant to my research. So pretty specific things. So I could come down here and here's Paul's use of Genesis 2:24 and Ephesians 5:31. This is a THM thesis that was done at Westminster Theological Seminary. So this might be a very useful resource. If nothing else, hopefully Peter has put together a fantastic bibliography we could work with, but we might also have some important insights that we might want to consider for our paper. And if I wanted to get a hold of this, I can request this through Interlibrary Loan. This is a book, so if you're in St. Louis, you can use our Interlibrary Loan request form. Go to the library homepage, come down here under Library Services, click Mobius and Interlibrary Loan, and then do Submit an Interlibrary Loan request. Log in with your ID, and you can request a book. You just put in the author, title, all the different information, and submit your request. If you're not in St. Louis and so you can't come to the Buswell Library here and pick it up, you can do this through your local public library to request that material. And contact us if you have any questions about how to do that. But anyway, so we've done some keyword searching and we've pulled up some subject headings. And now the last box on our worksheet is to note those subject headings. Look at your search results, see what subject headings come up for books that you're interested in, and then you can use those to help build more advanced searches. So for example, for that case of the New Testament use of the Old Testament paper, we might note we found a couple interesting subjects: Bible, New Testament in relation to the Old Testament, Bible, Old Testament quotations in the New Testament. And then we learned that we could do a search like this. So we can note that down there as well, that we do a subject search for the name of the book of the Bible that we're researching, and that phrase relation to find how that book is related to other parts of Scripture. And so that brings us to this point of that research is an iterative process. So expect to hit dead ends. Don't be afraid to backtrack and try a different approach. If your first attempt at finding some keywords to turn out material isn't working well, go back, brainstorm synonyms, talk to a friend, a professor, talk to a librarian, and see if you can find other terms so that you can find some of those subject headings to help you in your research. Explore multiple paths and multiple resources. So we noted a couple different subject headings that might be relevant to our research. And we can look at each of those in turn to find different kinds of resources or resources that approach our topic from different perspectives or different angles. And as you learn more about your topic, you will learn better how to research it. So as you get further along, you may need to go back and revisit some of your earlier searches so that you can improve them and find more and better materials. So hopefully that's given you some tips, some strategies that you can use to in your research. And if you have any questions, please contact the library. We'd be thrilled to help you out as you do brainstorming, helping you locate relevant subject headings, picking keywords, and helping you navigate the research process.